How's it going, everyone? It's June 1st, 2026. Summer is here, and you know what it's time for. My annual summer-themed movie collection update. Now, just to give a couple plugs here before we start, 10 of the films in this update were a part of a mid-90s summer youth-centric marathon I did, and I ended up doing an entire video essay about it that you can find on my channel now. The video is simply just called I Watched 10 90s Family Films, and you know what? I discovered a lot more in there than I thought I would have, and it was a really nice summer feeling nostalgic kickback. So check that video out. I will elaborate more than I will here because, like I said, that's 10 movies. I will show all 10 of them off here. The criteria was that they were family or youth-centric movies between 1994 and 1997. But I'm not going to spend too much time on them in this video because, obviously, I spent a lot of time on them there. And like usual, every June, I try to pick movies that reflect the time of the year. So this year, I did a lot of just outdoors, woodsy, just, summer vibed films. And obviously, all of those mid-90s movies were plentiful with that, but we've got a lot of outdoor mayhem here. So let's get into it. And the first one was a theatrical film that I saw this year in the theater, and I always try to buy the physical copies of these when they come out just to support the metrics and, do my hand with physical media. Every update, I collect the Statham movies, and this is his newest release with Shelter. Pretty middle of the road as far as an action movie's concerned. It's pretty by the numbers. It feels like a streaming movie. What set this apart a little bit for me, though, was the emotional connection between Statham and the little girl character in this. Because, they hint that there's a possibility it's his daughter, but the movie never outright confirms or denies it. But, the audience kind of puts two and two together. Their chemistry and some of their emotional beats, especially towards the end, that's actually what made this stand out, to me. And I ended up liking that connection a lot more than I did in the movie Safe with Statham, which is a movie that I wasn't really a huge fan of that one, to be honest with you. So Shelter, not action-packed or anything, but it's also pretty decent, and it's a good little bit of a more dramatic acting range for Statham. And then this one is a new boutique release from Red Shirt Pictures, Michael Felsher, in conjunction with Synapse Films, and they went all out for this, and I'm going to get to that in this big deluxe box set for Hunter's Blood, which prior to this had never seen any kind of a DVD or a Blu-ray release. As far as I know, it was pretty much trapped on VHS. You've seen this kind of movie before. Deliverance is what it gets compared most to. That's pretty self-explanatory. Group of yuppie city folk in the woods on a hunting trip. They run afoul of the local hillbillies, and mayhem and backwoods, hijinks ensue. I enjoyed this film. I'd never seen it before, heard vaguely of it, never seen it before, but I really enjoyed it for, what it was. That said, Michael Felsher, Synapse, you were way overzealous with making this big deluxe edition. This did not warrant that. This did not deserve that. And this was way more expensive than it had any right to be because of that. Should have just been a standard Blu-ray, maybe throw a slipcover in there, all the special features. This is all you needed. You did not need all these bells and whistles for Hunter's Blood. It made sense for Trick or Treat, and I think it makes sense for their upcoming Fright Night 2, which I will grab, but it's a good movie. I liked it. I wish this would have just been a standard release, and in my opinion, that's what it should have been. It's a good movie. It's not that good to warrant this, though. I mean, I'm happy to have it in my collection. It is a cool, release, but, beyond that, you're a little overzealous about that. And then here we have, set out on a summer resort, kind of Pacific Northwesty island type vibe, we have The Pack, part of the late 70s animal attack craze that was going on after Jaws. So you had orca, you had alligator, you had the swarm, and all that kind of stuff. And The Pack is actually a pretty well done movie. It slows down in a little, some places, but Joe Don Baker's your lead. I always really like seeing Joe Don Baker. And the animal stunts and the animal training for this was pretty much phenomenal. They had a great, the dogs in this movie are really vicious looking, and the animal attack sequences and the stunts and the way they do, train the dogs to do the attack scenes, this was actually really cool. It was really good. The backbone of the entire movie is pretty sad, because the whole thing is that these are abandoned pets that have gone feral. So, I mean, there's definitely a message to the movie, like, hey, take care of your pets and don't abandon them like a piece of shit. So, and it takes it to the extreme with that. But as a 70s animal attack horror movie, really enjoyed it. This is a Scream Factory Blu-ray I found very cheap at my used store. So, yeah, pretty solid time. All right, now we're really getting into the outdoors mayhem. I mean, that, of course, so there's a lot of woodsy movies in this. So Hunter's Blood, The Pack, and then this is a childhood favorite of mine. Had it on VHS, had it on DVD. Kino Lorber, a couple of years ago, they did a really nice job doing Summer Rental and Uncle Buck with John Candy, and I was like, oh, I hope they do my favorite John Candy movie. And they did. And yes, you heard me right, this is my favorite John Candy movie, The Great Outdoors. They got a commentary with the director, which is really fascinating and cool to listen to, because I've always loved this. This is a childhood favorite. It's my favorite John Candy film. It's set in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, where I've vacationed many times. You can find several videos on my channel about that. And it's just shenanigans with John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, and their families in the woods. It's very simple, but I love it. It's an all-time favorite for me. I'm glad Kino Lorber gave it a nice release like this. Goes perfectly with Summer Rental and Uncle Buck. And now this one is actually a bootleg. I don't like buying bootleg Blu-rays, because, I mean, there's just, they feel manufactured, and with my luck, it's going to get a real Blu-ray release now that I bought this. So we'll see. There's actually a few bootleg Blu-rays in here I all bought from the same company. But because of the studios that put those films out, I don't know how likely it is any of these will ever see a legitimate release. And this is another one. I saw this in high school. I've even got a pretty direct relationship with the soundtrack of this movie, as I helped track down one of the long-lost songs from the soundtrack called Paradise, which you can also find here on my channel. And this is the Kevin Bacon, Sean Astin film, Whitewater Summer. Never got a Blu-ray release, so this is a bootleg, but they upscaled it really nicely. It's a very high quality, nice release. And I've always enjoyed this movie, even though I fully acknowledge it's definitely all over the place. It's like Kevin Bacon's character and his motivation, like, is he just really set in his ways? Is he a sociopath? Is he a killer? Like, it jumps around a lot, and there's a lot of extremes in this. And the movie, it ratchets certain things up to 11 that, it's like, okay, this started as a coming-of-age movie, and now it's almost like it's trying to be a thriller. It is kind of off-kilter, but it's really well done. It's a good, small cast. Kevin Bacon, Sean Astin, a few others. The Pacific Northwest setting, an excellent soundtrack. For me, doing this summer update with this outdoor summer woodsy theme, as soon as I found this, I knew Whitewater Summer would be a great addition to have in this update. And it is a movie I recommend. So definitely seek Whitewater Summer out. And then going from there, we are now breaching into my mid-90s marathon. And like I said, I'll acknowledge which of the films were a part of that. I'm going to refer you, I'll put the link in the description, to my retrospective video essay that I did. But this first one was Wild America, which was my first of 3 films in that marathon that had Devon Sawa in them. Somehow this one had always escaped my radar. I never heard of this before. It's based on a true story of these brothers documenting endangered wildlife. And it's a cool movie. I really enjoyed this. Again, I'm repeating myself, I'm a broken record. But the scenery, the peril, there's a fun scene involving an alligator with a flashlight in its mouth that's pretty gnarly. The climax of this involves an airplane. I'm just going to go on a hunch and say that's probably not part of the brothers' real life story that this is based off of. This has the most preposterous, stupid climax I've ever seen in any movie. And every single character completely underreacts to it to where it became kind of jarring. But it was still entertaining. So, Wild America, I actually really like this one. And then another one also involving endangered wildlife and saving animals, because, you know, the outdoors and saving nature, it was a big part of pretty much all of these 90s movies. And this one, I believe also based on a true story, is Fly Away Home with Jeff Daniels and Anna Paquin. The more straightforward, more dramatic, really well done. Nice kind of sad backstory, kind of a melancholic air, which was another very common trend to a lot of these 90s movies. I don't have as much to say about this because it's not the typical type of movie I'd be watching a lot, but I was in the right headspace for the 90s, and this delivered. This was a good time, and Jeff Daniels is a fun character with his wacky aerospace, inventions. Okay, and then these two are also from the mid-90s marathon, and Mill Creek did this really cool, I don't know if they still do this or not. I haven't seen these releases in a while. I've got a bunch of them with the retro VHS slipcovers, and these two are Gold Diggers, The Secret of Bear Mountain, and The Cure. Gold Diggers was a surprise hit. I really like this one. This one has the perfect balance of a whimsical kids adventure treasure hunt in the wilderness and the mountains and going down the river, while also incorporating a very dark, serious domestic violence plot that ends up driving the third act of the film. And a lot of these, balance adult topics and themes. This one I thought really nailed the balance, and it was just a really enjoyable movie. Just a carefree kids treasure hunt adventure that also features some domestic abuse. So I like that one, though. That one surprised me. But if we're talking about which of those balanced dark and melancholy and kids adventure the best, this needs no introduction. The Cure with Brad Renfro and Joseph Mazzello. Man. For the first hour and 10 minutes or so of this movie, you have it's driven by the fact you have two boys. They become friends. One of them is sick with AIDS, so the film tackles homophobia, everyone's fear of this kid and fear of the family, and Brad Renfro gradually becoming his friend. And so the movie's an adventure and very lighthearted at first of them just having a good summer, trying to get the sick kid over his illness. They go on a, adventure trying to get to New Orleans, Louisiana. The 90s vibes are off the charts. And then the last 20 minutes are going to pull your heart out and hang you with it. But it's excellent, though. I really have no critiques to offer about this. It was a powerful film. It was an engaging film. And it still even gave me some of those adventurous, wistful 90s characteristics that I was after for the marathon. Another one of the bootlegs, got this one from the same website that I got Whitewater Summer from, and one other one coming up. I'm surprised this never got a Blu-ray release. It seems to be a pretty big, common kind of 90s cult favorite. Now and Then, which was the conclusion of my whole marathon, as it fits. It's a movie where you have adults looking back and reflecting on their childhood. Definitely very female-centric. I'm not exactly the audience for this. But that said, again, it's a well-done movie. See, this is why I can't be a critic. It's hard for me to, expand my vocabulary when talking about the world of films. Because I'm a very simple, easygoing movie connoisseur, where I'm like, yeah, no, this is good. It set out what it set out to do. And this is the second of the 3 90s films that Devon Sawa happened to be in. So he is indeed in this one as well. But no, it's very warm, very cozy, and very nostalgic, which is what the movie was trying to do, in its premise. This one was the first one for my marathon, and that's the Disney The Big Green. Definitely a bit rougher around the edges. hits more of the common sport movie 90s cliches, but then again, Little Giants is an all-time favorite of mine, and Rookie of the Year. This isn't quite on the same level of those, but it is definitely following the same playbook. And even this one takes some dramatic turns. You have a plot in there way ahead of its time in today's climate about immigration and a character getting deported from the team. It comes out of nowhere in this where it's almost jarring, but I'm just like, damn. So even Disney wasn't afraid to go, in those directions with something like The Big Green. Of course, it's got the kid from The Sandlot in there, so that's cool to see. It was a good one to start the marathon with, just because this was probably the most simple out of all of them. And even though it did have that, charge with the storyline and some of the subplots, it was a good entrance into what, that marathon was going to be. Now, this is not part of that marathon because this is not a youth-centric movie, but this is also from the 90s, as is the next one. And this, the sweltering summer heat, it's a crying shame that I never got around to watching this movie sooner. It doesn't need much of an introduction. Falling Down. What can I say about Falling Down? Everyone knows this. It's a huge cult classic directed by Joel Schumacher, who I'm a big fan of. Great performances by both Michael Douglas and Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall is like our protagonist and our level-headed, cop on the verge of retirement. And then you have Michael Douglas, who is just breaking down and losing his shit and losing his patience at the world. There is definitely more depth to it. His backstory is pretty sad, if nothing else. Even though his character is shown to be pretty unstable, even from the get-go, it captures the feeling of that hot, humid, just grimy summer day and that misery that just drives all of our tempers. So yeah, it took me way too long to get to Falling Down, but the hype did not disappoint. And then the final bootleg Blu-ray I got, and again, it's a 90s movie, but it was not part of the youth marathon. And I had always heard about this, and it just sounded intriguing. And it's a Charlie Sheen joint called The Chase. The first 40 minutes of this, I was loving it. Like, it was giving me shades of the 1997 movie Drive with Mark Dacascos, which is a favorite. I love that movie. So this started out a lot like that. You have a chase-centric car thriller action movie that's very non-serious. It has a lot of comedy. It knows what it is, and it's not trying to hide the absurdity. It's having fun with itself. So for the first 40 minutes of this, I'm like, oh man, I just found a gem. And then Kristy Swanson just falls in love with him. And even though the chase never stops, the movie just came to a halt for me. I'm like, the logic of this got thrown completely out the window. And it's a shame because I wanted to love this. And for the first 40 minutes I was. But then the forced romance takes over, and then that becomes the whole movie, and like the comedy disappears, and it just becomes more routine and kind of cringeworthy. I'm like, movie, you had me the first 40 minutes. This was an underrated gem. And then you fucked it up with your stupid romance plot. That, even for my illogical brain that loves these junk food movies, even I couldn't wrap my brain around. The Chase, you almost did it. You almost did it. I mean, it's worth a watch. It's not bad, but it's like, that could have been so great. All right, getting down to it, we have 4 Blu-rays left. It's first time trying out this angle, so I don't know, I'm trying to sit forward if I'm in the frame or whatnot. I thought it'd be a cool background, get the posters in there instead of the couch. All right, now we've got some 2000s stuff to break away from the 90s. So we've got There's Something About Mary, which, I mean, there's fun to be had. This made me laugh on quite a few occasions. But this crosses the line where it's like every single character in this movie is just such an oblivious asshole. And everyone here is just so unlikable. It's like, yeah, this is, pure early 2000s schlock and raunchy humor that, I mean, I had fun with, but by the end I was pretty exhausted. And this movie is way too fucking long. Way too long. So I never really got into the Farrelly brothers. It's like, I laughed. I was entertained, but by the time this was over, I was pretty exhausted with it. Now, this is one I remember from my childhood. My dad, I have a very vivid childhood memory. And I don't know why this has stuck with me for so long. But I remember my dad watching this movie. And it was always at the part, it would be on TV, and there's a part where Mark Wahlberg falls down the stairs on stage. And my dad would always be like, hey, Ken, look, this is the part where he falls down the stairs. And then I would always watch it, and I had never seen any other scene of this movie, but I had probably seen the scene where he falls down the stairs like 3 times. So I finally got around to watching the entire movie of Rockstar. And loosely based on a true story, again, unintentional theme I did not mean to do here, because the next film has that too. But it's pretty routine. It's not funny enough to work as a comedy, and it's too generic to work as a rise to fame story. So a bit of a mixed bag with this. It's not terrible. It's not that great. It's just kind of hovering in the middle somewhere. And then similar to There's Something About Mary, this is a comedy that just, it's everything about the 2010s. The party atmosphere, forced parties, forced musical numbers, and this is such a templated 2016 comedy. Mike and Dave need wedding dates. I thought it'd be good for the summer because it takes place in Hawaii, and it is. It's a very summer-tinged movie. Yes, this does follow all the trappings, cliches, and stereotypes of the 2010s that I absolutely hate about that era of comedy. But this crushed the threshold where it was just stupid enough that I actually ended up enjoying it. It's really stupid. It's really bad. It's really dumb. The scene with Kumail Nanjiani alone is just like, oh God. But I don't know. Something about it was so stupid that it crossed over the point and I actually liked it. So consider that an extremely mild, careful recommendation with that. Then the last Blu-ray for the update is I got this from the Screenwave store because, man, nostalgia, this whole thing was 90s nostalgia was my theme I was doing with this update. And nothing's more 90s nostalgic, you think, than board games and commercials for games. And I used to love watching this web series when James Rolfe first started doing it, especially in like the early 2010s. And then I just remember the series started getting really weird and I just stopped watching it. So a good chunk of this I was watching for the first time, and that is the complete Blu-ray series of Board James. It's got all the episodes on there, and I remember some of these. Like I remember it's because some of these had the very second episode. He's playing some Dungeons and Dragons type sorcery board game, and if you look that episode up on YouTube, the whole thing was about the VHS that you played along with it. And of course, he couldn't show any of the VHS for this Blu-ray release, so that episode is hugely trimmed down, which is a shame. And the Mr. Bucket episode, which is a classic, it doesn't include the commercial in there. But, at the end of the day, this was fascinating because I love the Mr. Bucket, the Dream Phone, great content and legitimately funny. Very James Rolfe, but very funny. And then it's just mind-blowing how far off the rails this series went. Like, by the time you get to the last episode, you're just like, what the fuck? But watching it now at 28, just on this Blu-ray, watching it as a marathon on the big screen, watching the complete series, I'm like, I enjoyed the ride. I prefer when it was just the more normal reviews with a slight cinematic edge. Like I said, Mr. Bucket, Dream Phone, that was like the perfect, middle ground before it flew completely off the rails by the end. But it was still fun, and I still had a good time watching. And I know a lot of the Angry Video Game Nerd and Screenwave stuff is out of print and really hard to find. They still have copies of this left on their website. So I'm like, you know what? I've got so much nostalgia for this era of James Rolfe, Angry Video Game Nerd, Board James. I'm like, I am perfectly okay having a physical copy of this. Now we've got some DVDs. So we're closing, let's see, so the 90s marathon, I'm just going to go through these fast. Richie Rich. I was entertained. It was fun for what it was, but ultimately it's a pretty stupid movie. As I point out in my 90s retrospective video, I was more interested how the premise of this really paralleled Macaulay Culkin's own life at the time. So I'm sure there was something cathartic about him doing this movie. It's not that great, but it's not boring. It's entertaining. Same thing with this. Out of all 10 of the mid-90s movies that I examined, this one, without a doubt, aesthetically speaking, was the most 90s. So if you just want to be absorbed in the visual, warm, saturated, cozy vibes of the 90s, this is the film for you. And I knew I was going to be, a sucker for it when the opening credits come up. Scholastic Presents. Never read any of the books, but this is the Babysitters Club. And with a very, very, very young Rachel Lee Cook in there, and it's a good cast. Definitely more of a female-centric movie. It's like a coming-of-age story for girls, but this was just so 90s, and the aesthetic would just, it pierces your soul. It was impossible for me not to enjoy this. So, my 90s heart was beating strongly while this was on. And now, of all the movies in the 90s marathon, this one, it was a kind of a weird outlier. It's the third one with Devon Sawa. I had never heard of this before because this one essentially asks the question, what if you take a 90s coming-of-age youth adventure story and you turn it into a crime thriller? And I don't know how this is not more well-known or with a bigger cult audience. It's a movie called The Boys Club. Stars, Devon Sawa. The main guy is Dominic Zamprogna is the main guy, but you have Devon Sawa, and then the big antagonist is played by Chris Penn. Chris Penn is easily the best part of this. That you have these boys, they ride their bikes, they've got their little hangout in the woods. A little bit more angsty of a vibe with the three of them, especially with Devon Sawa. Then you've got one guy that's like the nerd, and one guy who wants to be a pilot. Which is another weird recurring, like Wild America, Fly Away Home, there's like a big aviation theme in the 90s too. But one day they get to their clubhouse in the woods to find out that Chris Penn has crashed it. And he claims to be a cop. And from there it turns into a moral dilemma, like a morality tale of what do you do in this situation? What would you do? What would you do? And for that, it's a pretty cool, underseen, weird little thriller that ultimately I enjoyed. It's not perfect. It's got pacing issues galore. The side supporting characters are all pretty much terrible. Like the main kid, Dominic Zamprogna's character, his character has an older brother that is like the worst acted part of it. Every time he was on screen, it took me out of the movie. But, the dark, angsty crime vibes and kind of that innocence turned on its head and stuff, and Chris Penn alone. It's a weird, odd watch that I am shocked does not get talked about more. So if anything I just said sounds interesting, it's definitely one that's worth seeing. And then also for the Jason Statham collection, this, after Snatch and Lock, Stock, a lot of the same people, Vinnie Jones, Statham, a lot of the same Guy Ritchie crew worked together on this remake of The Longest Yard. Yes, the Burt Reynolds movie and the Adam Sandler movie. Well, in between the two of those versions, we had this version called Mean Machine, which is British, so it's about, soccer. Vinnie Jones is your main guy. You've got Statham as your loose cannon psychopath, which was awesome to watch. Statham is absolutely hilarious in this movie as the goalie. It's been a long time since I've watched either version of The Longest Yard. I remember enjoying both of them. If you want to see the British version of that, I'd say this one pretty well delivers, and it's a very nice, unique addition to my Statham, and even my Guy Ritchie collection, because there's so much overlap with this and Lock, Stock, and my favorite is Snatch. So, these last two come courtesy of my good friend Ryan down in Florida. He contributed this to my 90s youth marathon, A Kid in King Arthur's Court, which is cool because there's a young Daniel Craig and a young, Kate Winslet in there. The movie itself is really not that good. It is such bare bones 90s Disney fantasy schlock that doesn't really have the emotional angle that any of the other ones had. So not really my kind of movie, but for the sake of the marathon, it was a fun piece to visit, at least for one-time watch. Now, this is a DVD that Ryan bought at a diner in New Jersey, because apparently the diner in New Jersey, you know, some of the scenes here were filmed there. It's an independent film. I cannot find any information about this online. It's called Our Summer Movie. There's a website URL on the back, www.oursummermovie.com, which is now defunct. I could not find this on Amazon or anything, so yeah, I guess you gotta go to that diner in New Jersey if you want a copy of this. It's, for what it is, for this indie, low-budget, independent comedy film that's meant to be poking fun at Hollywood, it entertained me, and it was not that bad. Like, all things considered, they did pretty solid with this. That said, it's a film about a bunch of cringe film students trying to stick it to Hollywood, which you know is probably the exact reason behind why the film was made to begin with. It translates on the screen. So I'm just like, and especially me, a guy who went to an art school for my undergrad, I'm like, yeah, this film about cringe film students was made by cringe film students. And evidently they wrote a lot of horny scenes in there just so they could get themselves laid on screen. So, but I love weird little shit like this. The story of Ryan buying it from a diner and sending it after, because we could not find anything about this online. So if anyone can find anything about this online, be my guest. But yeah, it's a weird one. All right, well, summer is officially upon us. It is June. Hopefully have some fun summer content. You know, lots of graduation parties, lots of parties. Got a vacation planned for the end of July, so hopefully do a cool travel video about that. Hope you guys liked the summer update. Hope you enjoyed checking out my 90s retrospective video. And yeah, thank you for watching, everyone. Comment below, and we will see you soon. Take care.